guys all just getting here? My name is Frank Calo. I'm a film producer and director and writer as well. I used to work for Lionsgate as an executive. I used to work for New Line as an executive. And I started from the bottom all the way up. I went to film school. I went to my directing. I always wanted to be a director since 5 years old. So I had to find my own path. And so I ended up getting accepted at one of the most elite directing schools in the country at the time, which was the Goodman Theater in Chicago. And at that time, it was an elite directing school. And I was a young kid, I didn't know what I was doing, but it was one of the best experiences I had. And then from there, when I graduated, I asked one of my professors, what should I do next? He goes, are you serious about being a director? I said, yes, of course, this is what I always wanted to do. And he said, well, then you should learn about acting. He said, take 2 years, I can get you in the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. If you want to do this, learn how to communicate with actors. And I'm coming out of a 4-year program. I'm going, oh man, 2 more years. I want to get out in the world. All my friends were going, I'm going to New York. I'm going to California. And I said, thanks to my mother, I said, yeah, I'll go. But at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts at that time in New York City, they had one in LA and New York City as well. And then I went there, but I couldn't tell them I was a director. I had to be an actor. And that was my first step. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And you couldn't work outside of the school because it was a strict training program. But I'm telling you this story because as a director, to this day, that was probably one of the best advices I got from a professor, from someone who guided me on that part of my path. Because what I learned in there is I went through the actor's process. I had to get up there, take movement class, and I had to take acting sword class, and I had 3 great acting teachers throughout the 2-year program. And I learned so much about the process. Now, when you remember, I was younger, and so I'm just absorbing everything and not knowing anything either. But I was always involved with the theater. And once I got out of there, I almost got kicked out of school because I said, you know what, screw this. I'm gonna go direct an off-Broadway play in New York City because I got offered. And stupid me, had a Shakespeare teacher. I said, listen, you'll be great for this play. He goes, what do you mean you're working on a play off-Broadway? This is just before graduation. And I said, well, you'll be great in it. I think you'll be wonderful. And he goes, come with me. Come on. And he took me upstairs to the headmaster, right? And they go, you can't be directing this, And they didn't let me graduate. And I said, well, fine, I'm done anyways, so what? And then I got involved in the theater. Back in New York City, that's when it was terrible. Theater Row was not even developed. We were part of the theater program. I got lucky because I worked with another mentor of mine, Vincent Gugliotti. He came out of the Joseph Papp Theater. He's another mentor of mine, and we built the Forum of Italian-American Playwrights. From that workshop, I was a young kid. I did anything. I was humble enough to say, I'm going to do anything. I swept floors. I was there doing the lights while they did stage readings of plays. I was there doing anything for 2 years, but we were working on Mario Ferrati's play called 9. And then finally they got the financing of 2 years of workshopping. They hired Tommy Toon, who was a big director stage director at the time, dancer. And they said, kid, we're going to take you with us. And they said, we're not going to pay you. I said, I didn't expect you to pay me. But they said, we're going to give you residuals. Well, that show hit Broadway, was starring Raul Julia, and back in the day. And a lot of people know 9 because Antonio Banderas did the revival. But whenever he does it, I still get residual checks from it. What they did is they gave me points. With that money, I went to New York University Film School. I got accepted, and I went to film school. And I left that film school without paying a debt. And because of that path. And I'm saying this to you because you have to find people around you that's going to help you get to where you want to be. Now, a lot of you people are seasoned already. I'm just giving you my opinion and my background on directing. And then from there, after Broadway, I got into film. I started off in horror films. I did some of the most ridiculous horror films in the world. I got hooked up with investors. They wanted to do $100,000 budgets. And they made millions on them because these horror films were like around Halloween, Mother's Day, and some of them are classics now. And I remember the stupid one I did was called Space Avenger. And the director, I was producing, and the director was like, moving this monster around. And he goes, that monster's not moving. I said, hey, what are you talking about? I'm moving the monster. He goes, that monster's not moving. Put more blood on it. Put more slime on it. Here, you do it, man. You do it. But I knew I had to get out of there, but because I didn't want to stay in that horror film. Now, the horror film genre is a money-making thing. And then and it was a training path for me. And what I did is, what I was smart though, is I hired professional crew members, grips, gaffers, electrics, props, everything. Because we had the money, I hired professional people around me. That group took me to the next level, which was I went on to Ghostbusters 2 as an AD, as an assistant director. And so from there, I stayed in the real world of the film. But I worked as an AD, I worked as a line producer, I worked as a UPM, and I worked up to myself producing and directing. And all this time, I knew I was going to direct. But I had to work. Nobody's going to give me that shot. But I had to fight for it. Every step of the way, you're going to fight every single step of the way. You're going to compromise. You're going to fight every step of the way. When I left NYU, I thought, okay, I'm a director. I'm a director now. But I hit the real world. And I wasn't a director. I had to learn that all over again, the real world, and that's what I give lectures about, the realities of the film business. I call it the nuts and bolts of the film business. Because what I learned that universities don't do is they don't train you for the real world. What are you going to do when you get out? What are you going to do? And then people think, I'm a director, I'm a writer, whatever. You're not. You have to be humble enough and humble yourself to be a PA, production assistant, and then work your way up, learn your path. And I took bullets, man, because I wanted it so bad. I wanted to learn. And that's what was important. And one of my biggest films, I'm going to show you a clip of it now, is what helped me move up to the next ladder. Could we show the Believer, please? This film we won Sundance with, and we got nominated for an Oscar. Okay, it was Ryan Gosling's first film, and we gave him his break. And I'll talk to you afterwards, okay?
People hate Jews, do you agree? The very word makes their skin crawl. They undermine traditional life, and they deracinate society. You can take British Jewish mind ever. Marx, Freud, Einstein, what have they given us? Communism, infantile sexuality, and the atom bomb. Dang, this is great. But how can you believe all of this when you're a Jew yourself? One of the reason why we hate them? Because they exist. We have all the reasons we need in 3 simple letters. J-E-W. Jewish. You say it 1,000,000 times, it's the only word that never loses its meaning.
How can you wear that thing? Do you know what it means to people?
Hello, my people. Why? Are you out of your mind?
You really want to kill Jews? You want to kill me?
We're the chosen people. Isn't that right, Damon?
That's The Believer. We ended up winning Sundance with that film. And we also, our competition at that time was, if you guys know these films, Almost Famous and American History X. And people confuse this film with American History X all the time. So, but I love Almost Famous. And when we were screening it at Sundance or wherever, I used to sneak over and watch Almost Famous because I love that film. My daughter knows that. I love that film. But that was our competition. And you saw this. And what I was telling people before about nuts and bolts, I lecture on the reality of what we expect in the business. outside of universities and stuff like that. This was a big step for all of us because it was the first time the director was his debut. He was a writer. He wrote Basic Instinct, Dangerous Seeking Susan, and this was his first debut. I was on another film for the studio called Perfume, and it was all improv, no script, major stars, Jeff Goldblum, everybody. And I said, I got to get off of this film, man. This is. I'm gonna get the blame for this because nobody knew. It was all improv. Oh, we're gonna just make it up as we go. It was about the fashion industry. So I went to the head, my executive. I said, listen, get me off this film, man. And he goes, well, there's a film called The Believer in New York City, and that's where I live. I said, I'm gonna take that. So I met the director. We hit it off, and I got Billy Zane. Billy Zane was the star because he was just coming off of Titanic. So that was our star. And to give you an idea of what this is, we originally had, what's her name? I forgot her name. Italian actress. I forgot her name. She was a very, very famous, Isabella Rossellini. We had her instead of Teresa Russell. And a month of production. We were going through 6 weeks. Everybody had the script. And I said, okay, guys, I came on the show and we said, let's cast the main lead. And we found Ryan Gosling in an audition. Now he was from a casting director. He was coming off of young Hercules. He was a Disney character. And the studio said, no way. There is no way you're going to go with that guy. He's a young Hercules. He's a Disney kid. This is a tough character. And we said, no, we're going to go with him. We like him. We're going to go with it. It's our film. We fought them. I'm not going to tell you the studio, but we fought them. And they almost said, well, we're going to walk away. And we said, okay, fine. We'll find the money somewhere else. And they said, fine. They said, okay, we'll go with you if you believe this. And they came to me and they said, this is on you. This is on you. And this is what I'm trying to tell you as a producer. These are the responsibilities you have. Or as a director, that's the responsibility you have. When people go out and say, oh, I'm a producer. Yeah, wait till shit hits the fan. Then let's see if you're a producer. Let's see if you're going to take that responsibility. So that's where you have to be careful. So we fought for Ryan Gosling. That film ended up winning Sundance, ended up winning Berlin Film Festival, and it was, all over. And the first, after it was successful, the same studio came up and said, Ryan, we'll give you your next 2 movies, Murder by Number and Notebook. The same studio who didn't want him. He was brilliant. He was freaking brilliant. And he still is, but what happened, I was the producer assigned to it. So we went all through pre-production. And I told my crew, this is Friday, Monday we start shooting. We had all the locations locked in. We had everything ready to go. And Isabella Rossellini agent called me and said, she's dropping out. I said, why? What are you talking about? I thought she was a joke. I said, are you kidding me? I was at my UPM. We're having drinks, celebrating Friday night. And he goes, she's dropping out. I said, what? She can't do that. She's under contract. And she goes, well, she just realized she doesn't want to play a Nazi, head of the Nazi mother. And I said, she had a month of rehearsals. What the hell is she talking about? And then finally I said, fine. So I went back to the studio, who was financing us. I said, this is on you guys. You guys got to find me somebody else. You have to find me somebody else. And then they said, okay, push everything for a week. And we'll get you somebody else. And they got us Teresa Russell, who came in a week later, knew all her lines, knew everything, and that's who you're seeing now. She was brilliant. She was wonderful. That's what actors do. That's what actors can do for you. And when you get the right actor for you. But now, production-wise, it set us all back 1 week. So I had locations locked in for that whole week, and I lost them all. I lost because they said, no, we had a brownstone in the first week, and they said, no, you can't use it now. You paid for it, and we had to pay for it. So we lost, it was like a domino effect. We lost every single locked-in location. Now, I knew I had to go ahead and shoot. So what I did is I called the studio up, and I said, listen, I'm going to hire 2 location management teams. Give me one on set, and give me one out there every day looking for the next location. And that's how we did it. We went through every day. We didn't know what the next day was going to be. I had an idea. I did my homework. I know the foundation. And every day, and the director came up and goes, Frank, what do you? I said, listen, man, you just go direct. You take care of the actors. You take care of your studies. I'll take care of this. And I put on 2 location teams, and you jump around. And the one time I only yelled at it one time, it was like we had a there was like an AA meeting type scene, but for Nazi, whatever. And the location manager came in with 3 different little offices, like the YMCA, this and this. And he goes, well, I don't know which one. I said, pick this one because we got to go. We got to go tomorrow morning, and it's 5 o'clock. And we got to let SAG know that we're going to use these that day. And he goes, okay, you pick it, Frank. So, but the whole 6 week of shooting was headache after headache, but we were ready for it. It helped me because I knew that's why I was there. That's why I was there, because it made me grow as a director, as a producer. It made me understand production because I went through all that stuff I told you earlier about, and low budget films and all that kind of stuff. But it was getting me ready. The theater background was getting me ready. Everything was getting ready. It was the first time the director, it was his first directorial debut. It was Ryan Gosling's big film. It was Jim Denal who shot it. It was a DP. Now he's on Yellowstone. It was his first major feature. It was a first for all of us, but we were all ready. But we worked off of each other. And what's very important is your team, who you hire as your team. I know you have a 7-week shoot. I know one of these days I'm going to lose orientation. I have my script girl, my script person. I'm going to need her. I'm going to say, where are we now? Did we do this? The continuity's off. I know I'm going to fall in that trench. But I hire a team, and I want a team around me that's going to say, hey, let me help you out of that trench. Let me help you out of there. Now, if you don't respect your crew and you treat them like dirt and you treat them like they're nothing, when you fall in that trench, which we all do, trust me, they're going to say, okay, fine, you stay in that trench. I don't care. They're going to stay there. But I wanted to give you that example because then we went to Sundance, we got accepted, and then we found out we won. And then like 5 years later, Sundance did a revival of The Believer. So I went out there with Ryan, I went there with the cast, I was out there, and we had a bar, having a good time. And I told that story to Ryan and to the cast. And they went, really? Where were we? We didn't know that was happening. And then I said, I'll keep that to myself. Because I knew that I kept the director and as a producer, I kept the director and the actors working. And I knew we were ready for it. Now, if I was unseasoned, I would have been like, oh my God, let me call you, dude. But it's like the team, it's like, when you're a director, you're not God. You're not the master of the set. You're a part of a team. You're a collaboration. And I just had a great conversation, and I went through this before with a good director here. And when I hire a DP, I tell that DP, it's like, you're here to execute my vision. You're not here to do and I need your help. I need you to delegate. And I'll give you another example, working with the DP. One time I was doing another film, and it won a lot of awards as well. And I set it up the wrong way. For one reason, I knew I set it up the wrong way. I did a static, like basic coverage, like dolly here, go wide shot, going in here, going in here, going in there. And the director, and the DP said, Frank, and the scene was in the bedroom. The scene was in the bedroom. And he said, Frank, this is you said you want a movement. He said, this is boring. I said, well, what do you want to do? He says, let me get in the room. Let me handhold it and get into the room, in the bedroom with the actors. And I said, well, show me. And he did. I said, that works. That works. I said, let's do that. And he was in there, and we got one of the best shots in there, in that scene. Because we were collaborating. We weren't bosses. We were collaborating, trying to make this piece of art work. And it's very important. And then from there, that won Sundance, and then I won another film for Tribeca Film Festival. Can we show them here and there? Here and there. This is the one that we won for Tribeca Film Festival, and I'll tell you the story after that, okay? And then I'm going to start doing Q&A as well.
That's it? $20?
That's Cyndi Lauper, by the way.
Why then?
Because she doesn't have the PhDs and you finally seats. I cannot be back.
But isn't there like a war going on?
It's okay. Why are you fucking that?
I didn't hear anybody
Good time to go back.
I'm sorry. Back this year. This is for your things.
The lunch not bad.
Stop.
Say here, Mommy, what are you talking about?
Robert, you look good.
you take any with you to the hair?
This is for special occasions. Here. Can I help you something?
Yes. You can.
Halos ko ang pinagpupiro. Can we still get married now? We will pay you a year.
You have a wife.
No worries.
And that's here and there. And that won the Tribeca Film Festival in New York City. And that was one of the most beautiful romantic movies I ever worked on. And the actors that you saw, that we shot that in Serbia, by the way. We shot 3 weeks in New York and 6 weeks in Serbia. And what happened, the director, Darko, who's a wonderful director, by the way, very, very disciplined director. And Serbia was finishing the war, and they wanted to build up their arts culture and stuff like that. So they were giving out money out to filmmakers. And he said, but he needed an American producer. So we hooked up, and I went there to help him get the financing. And that was like a $3 million film, by the way. And we went there, and I came out. I talked with the Serbian Culture Center. I came out with 2 films, man. They financed 2 of our films from Serbia. And then we shot it in New York and we shot it in Serbia. But it was one of the most romantic films. No explicit sex scenes or anything like that. It was just one of the best films. And the Serbian actress is one of the best actresses all across Europe. And then Tribeca, we won Tribeca Film Festival for that, and we got nominated. We got consideration for a nomination for Best Foreign Film because it came out of Serbia. And that's how we got through that film. But by that time, I was like 5 years past The Believer, and so that was an easy film to do, But what we had to do is we had to lock down all the bridges in New York City because there was a driving scene and they had to cross over, and in order to do that, you have to get permits. You have to have the police. You have a camera car. You have everybody car because you can't let the actors drive and stuff. And we had to drive. One day, it was driving through theirs, and I locked down George Washington Bridge, I locked down 59th Street Bridge, I locked down Tribeca, all these big bridges in New York at a certain time, but it was 2 weeks planning. And you had to go to the film commissioner's office in order to get permission. Well, I had a reputation with them already, so I had a rapport. So they let me go ahead and they do what I want to do as long as because I believe in safety as well. Safety on a set is very, very important. And it's dangerous because you have traffic. You can't go out there. I had a young kid telling me, I'm going to shoot this big action scene. I said, what's your budget? He goes, no, nothing. I said, he wanted FDR Drive. And it's a big drive, highway. And I said, you got people chasing, the actors are going to drive, yelling out the window, shooting at each other on FDR Drive. You're not even going to lock it down. I said, that's not going to happen, brother. That's not going to happen. And he thought he did. And then he got busted by the cops, and I said, yeah, see, I told you. But I only have a short period of time, and that's just a little bit of my work. I do a lot of other stuff, and I do theater as well. I'm doing an off-Broadway play now. But I want to talk about relationship with the actor and director, and I don't know if you guys know, we have a wonderful actor here, Mike Pernitzky. He's in Ozark and Hightown. Come on up here, Mike. He's in Hightown, which I love that show, and it turns out that the same crew that he was shooting Hightown was the same crew I did on The Cookout, which I'll show you later. But I want to talk about the act, and especially in episodic work. And in episodic work, when you're on the show, and you're in like your second season, and and the new director comes in, he or she's hired for that week. What is your response to working? And this is very important, people, because I want you to learn that you're not going to go into a season show with seasoned actors. He's a wonderful actor. I'm a big fan of his work, by the way. And you're not going to go in there and say, hey, you know what? Let's do an exercise. Let's do an acting exercise. Well, I think you're not going to do that. So please explain to what your experience is working with not the original creator of the show, but the directors if they work for hire and stuff like that. What's your experience as an actor? Go ahead.
Well, rule number one is you show up prepared. That seems very elemental, but you would be surprised. And fortunately, like in Hightown, for example, which by the way is on Netflix, so I recommend it to everybody.
It's a great show.
It's a really good show. After you've been doing the character for a while, you're kind of comfortable in that skin. And so it comes pretty natural. So the idea of being prepared is typical. It'd be unusual if you weren't at that point. But also, if it's a new director, you try to have a little bit of a conversation just so you get a feel for their point of view and what they're bringing to the table and what their ideas are. But also, typically in episodic television, they're going to bring in directors who they're going to continue with the theme and the direction and the look and the pictures of the show. And so they're not going to have a lot of latitude. But I think it's important, A, for you to be prepared, and I think it's also very important that you communicate. And if for some reason there's an issue with the scene or you have an idea about it and you want to ask, it's perfectly fine to ask and have a dialogue about it. Don't assume, don't waste a take on an idea that nobody really knew about. A lot of it you'll get during the rehearsal process too, during that time right before you shoot the scene, when you're rehearsing and you try some things and you do some things, and then you'll kind of get a feel for what they want to do, and then vice versa, they'll see what you want to bring to the show. But preparation and communication, I think, is the absolute essential.
Did you ever work with directors that you knew was not ready or just not really, and the actors had to take it over themselves?
I don't know if not ready is fair.
Yeah.
Maybe some that had a point of view that just wasn't working. So then what you do is you very diplomatically and you very professionally, you say, all right, that's great. That's really cool. Once we get that, can we try one of these? I have this, or this sort of follows in line with how this character was progressing to this point. We'll do what you're talking about. That's great. And then you rock it, you deliver it. You don't take more than one take to do it. And then let's try it this way. That seems to be more in line with where we've been to this so far. And then usually you'll come.
Right, because I was at the Tribeca Film Festival this year, and they had the panel, and I was listening to the panel. They had the panel for John Hamm's new episodic work and stuff like that. And the creator, this is very important. The creator of the show wrote the show, and she went to Netflix to sell it, and they said, learn how to compromise at that level. Learn how to compromise, because you're going to walk in with your script as a creator and showrunner, and you're going to walk in with your script, and don't be married to it. And she said, and there was a great panel. There was a great panel. And the creator, nowadays in episodic TV, the showrunners and the creators are the bosses. They're there for the run. And also in episodic work, a lot of times when I worked on episodic work, we had two directors. Like I was line producing then, and we had two teams. One was prepping, and one was shooting that current present episode. And then you duck. And I worked with Tim Van Patten. He did. And I love working with him too. But that works. But as young directors, learn to compromise. Don't be precious. Don't be like, oh, this is my script. They're going to change it. And then the creator of the show came in, the lady, she said that they wrote a beautiful scene. She said, it's a beautiful scene. We wrote this beautiful scene. And then John Hamm came in and said, okay, we're not going to do this. 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 I'm going to stand over here, not over there. And they go, and the creator said, and the director looked at, the creator looked at the producer. He goes, well, that's John Hamm. Who's going to go, you or him? So you have to understand that compromise. But why I'm telling you that is the reality of the business. This is what they don't teach us this in school. You have to learn this on your own. You have to learn. Somebody had a wonderful student had a question yesterday about how to adapt, how to change on the set. I thought it was a brilliant question because that's what we're always doing.
Right, and then as far as the preparation goes, for actors, many times that preparation can be very solitary. It's you at home with the script, you in a hotel room getting ready to shoot, and then you may even start going around the room and start to block it out, and you begin to develop a very distinct vision in your mind of how you see it, how you want to play it. But you've got to always, when you show up to work, you can bring all that, but understand that everybody else is doing the same thing. And they're all going to bring the best of themselves. So you have to allow the room for all that to breathe and just let it sort of come together in the space, on the day, in the moment, and give yourself that latitude so that really your preparation should always be more about choice and character and intention than blocking or things that are physically too specific that don't necessarily incorporate the director's vision or what the other actors.
Right, that's a good point. And what I call that, now I'm listening to him talk, and I appreciate him being up here, and I call that homework. What I tell my cast in a first rehearsal, especially in theater, but in film as well, you do your own homework. You expect me to come to set prepared with my own homework for that day's work. I want you to, I'm not here to tell you what your motivation is. I'm not here to tell the actor, I'm not an acting teacher. A lot of young directors think, what's your motivation? I don't know, to get to the moon? I don't know. You know, Marlon Brando had a great answer for that.
Walk up to the director and go, what do I want in this?
Yeah, and the
director
director
will go, let me tell you what I want.
yeah.
I want to be out of here in an hour.
Yeah,
That's what I want.
And so, but I strongly believe, and it works, people, it works. Homework. He just talked about he on his own apartment was doing his own homework. I'm doing my homework. Then we meet, and that's where our work collaborates.
Well, that's where the magic happens.
Yes,
really.
yes.
When you put all these people in the space, and you have to, with your preparation, also has to have a certain amount of security and freedom that you're going to bring that character to life, and it's going to play with everything else. And ideally, it's all going to mesh and it's all going to come alive, because ultimately, that's what we want to see. We want to see human behavior happening as if we're peeking through the kitchen window. And so it's all got to come to life in that moment. And you have to, with your preparation, allow yourself the latitude to let that happen. And it also is respecting everybody else.
Right. It's very important respect. I hate this because I grew up, I seen it. I came up from old school. I'm sure you did too. When I was taught, you shut up. If you didn't know something on set, you either got fired or you got kicked off. But I also saw some abusive directors who yell and scream, and I'm not going to say any names because that's not what this is about. But it's like, and I don't believe in that. I still believe in one word, the craft. I believe his craft, he's working on a craft, I'm working on a craft, and we bring it together. And that's what I believe in, and that's what we have here. We're working on our craft, and when we get together, I need him. I'm telling you something, I had this happen to me as a young director. I was in theater, off Broadway, at the American Theater of Actors, and Dan Laurie was in it, and I got him later, and I was a young director. I would direct anything. So the lady calls me up and goes, I saw it in the showbiz paper, and I go there to the theater. She goes, are you Frank? I said, yeah. She goes, here's my script. I go, okay, I'll direct it. The artistic director for the theater goes, well, who are you? I said, I'm directing this show. He goes, really? You know, and I said, and it was off Broadway, you know, but it was the play about retirement. So my entire cast was 65 and over, seasonal theater actors, and I'm a young director going, okay, listen up. This is what we're going to do. They go, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. If you ever experience a mutiny on the set, then you don't ever want to experience that. That's, you know, but then I learned respect. You got to learn respect. And I'm going to toss this out here. I was one of the last kids who studied, you guys will understand, the young kids won't know, but Elie Kazan. Mm-hmm. I was one of the last students, and how I met Elie Kazan at the same theater I was talking about. And he's a wonderful director from the 50s. He did On the Waterfront with Marlon Brando, James Dean, East of Eden, and all that. And I was rehearsing. I fought for my rehearsal space for my cast. And there's a knock on the door. And the assistant came in and goes, we have this rehearsal space. I said, no, you don't. I have it. I said, no, I have this rehearsal. He goes, all right, let me go get my director. I go, get your director. In walks Elie Kazan. And then Elie Kazan comes in, and he's a small guy, and he walks in, and my entire cast went, see you later, Frank. See you later, Frank. We'll see. I go, wait, where are you guys going? And then I looked at Elie. I said, oh, God. I said, oh, my God. I said, here, take the room. He goes, no. And he told the cast, don't leave. Direct. You say you're the director, direct. I said, no. I mean, it's your space. He goes, no, please, direct. I'm here to watch. And, of course, I didn't know what I was doing. And he said, come to my class. I only take 6 students in his entire life. And he was older then at the time. And in his bedroom, in his living room. We were all in his living room just listening to him. But he taught me one most important thing that I had to work on as a young man, as a young director. My entire life, I worked on this one word. And don't say anything, but I'm going to ask you one question, you directors out there. What is it that a director directs? No, you know. Go ahead. Anybody? Anybody have an answer? This is what I learned, and I'll tell you this. I'm sorry.
Somebody had an answer.
Yes, ma'am. Story is very important. That's the director's job. But within that story, what is it that the director directs? That's the question. And this is what I learned from Elie Kazan, and it took me years to master it. The word is subtext. I direct the subtext of the material. So when I communicate with the actors, you'll bounce off on this. Never, ever give an actor a line reading. I see young directors going, hey, and this is a seasoned actor. I'm going to go to him and say, I want you to say it like this. And he's going to say, what are you going to tell me?
Let's roll. You know what? I'd probably not really directly respond.
Yeah.
And let's just shoot it.
Yeah. I work
Because
with.
you don't want to pick a fight.
Yeah.
Because because people, if you say, I want you to say it like this, then you don't want to go, no, I ain't gonna do that. Okay, here we go. Yeah.
When I was working in the
Crew's
studio,
gonna take a seat while the director
exactly
and the actor
right.
fight it out.
Never, director's not giving line readings. It's not blocking. It's not this and that. That's your technique. That's your style. That's your voice. But when you communicate with your actors, you're talking about subtext. When I go to my DP, my cameraman or woman, I'm talking subtext. This is a dark scene. I want the lighting to match this. And you had a great point. We had about point of view of the camera. Where's your point of view of the camera? That's your subtext. You always have a point of view. I don't care if it's a cat or if it's a person or if the camera's subjective. You have a point of view. You look for that. And you talk to your costume director. When an actor comes in, they have one job. They have a big job, don't get me wrong, but they have one job. Director, producer, I have to talk to actor, costume designer, makeup, casting director, producer, studio who's down on my neck. I have to talk to everybody. And it's my vision. You learn how to execute my vision. Now, he and I could take the same story. I'll go off and direct it, and he goes off and directs it. He'll interpret his voice. I'll interpret my voice. That's what's great about what we do. There's no right or wrong. It's my interpretation, but it took me a long time to master that subtext. And how I did it, I got two actors together, and I did a scene from Picnic, a William Inge Picnic, about it's a 1950s play about sexual repression. And I did it. I brought it to Eli Kazan. I said, "Here's the scene," and he goes, "Frank, you directed like that was fucking Disney. That's a Disney movie." He goes, "This is sexual repression. Work on this. The lady's turned on to. He takes his shirt off, and she's like, and I said, what is that? What are you talking about? He goes, that's your subtext. That's what you learn. And then I learned it, and I got it, and I came back with that scene, and man, that was the most sexiest scene in the world, but subtle, and not like out there. Mm-hmm. So that's my advice to you guys. Learn that word if you don't know it already. If you do, that's great. And then you'll understand what I'm talking about. Now, anything you want to add to that? Or?
No, that's all good.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions? I know we're running out a little bit of time, so I know we're on short. Anybody have questions, production questions, anything? But please ask Michael or myself.
Yeah, so coming from, both being a producer and a director, I would love to hear, sort of experiences where you had to balance practicality versus your vision, and how much that happened, because you were talking about, you have to compromise on set. So just any of those times that you felt that there was a clash between what you wanted this project to be and how you had to adapt it while still maintaining the vision.
It's one of the reasons why. It's a good question, by the way. That's basically what we're talking about, the reality of the business, what you should expect. That's one of the reasons why I left the studio. I grew up in the studio, Lionsgate, New Line. I started New Line with Robert Shea, and then I went to Lionsgate, and I became an executive, green lighting pictures and all that work. But whenever they got greenlit, and I fought for him, like he would come in with the script, I would come in, there'd be three other producers, and Robert Shea would be there, and he'd say, okay, and I fight for him. I'll fight against him. Do my script. I think this is a great story. This is a great story. And Robert Shea would say one thing. He would say, all right, you got a script? What's your audience range? And if I said 45 to 65, he goes, nope, get out of here. If I said 15 to 75, and I could back it up with the script, that's dollars and cents to him. So, but at the same time, compromise is a lot of times, and I'm not going to mention names because that's not what this is about, but a lot of times you have to take the bullet. You have to bite it. If the studio comes in, and like I said with John Hamm, if the studio comes in and says, no, we're going to go this way. And I'll give you an example. I did Monsters Ball. I was assigned to Lee Daniels' Monsters Ball because I found it. And when you guys familiar with Monsters Ball? Okay, when he brought that script to me, we got Billy Bob Thornton, and then Halle Berry came in. I'll just give you this jump ahead. Halle Berry came in, and Lionsgate said, oh man, we got Halle Berry. And don't get me wrong, she won an Oscar, it did well, it did money-wise, it did great. But the script was not that. The script was about a 400-pound lady who was projecting her anger on her overweight son. And the dynamic to me, aesthetically, was when Billy Bob Thornton first saw that character in the diner, and you look at Halle Berry, and who's not going to fall in love with her? Because he falls in love with her if you don't know the story. Okay? He falls in love with her, and they have an affair, and he helps her out and stuff like that. But imagine the dynamic of him falling in love with a 400-pound black lady from the South. That was the dynamic. And they said, Lionsgate said, Halle Berry wants to do it. She read it, and we're going to go with her. What are you going to do? They're the boss. They're your boss. And I said, okay, fine. We're going to go with her. And don't get me wrong. It was successful. She won an Oscar. So that's they were right on that level. But Lee Daniels then went around, and I said, Dan, we had, coffee, drinks, and stuff talking about it. And I said, they ruined the dynamics. And I said, and he goes, then he wrote Precious. And that's why Precious came out about the girl who was a young girl, and he came out but he redeemed himself in that dynamic. And by that time, he was a star. Yes. How many minutes? 10 minutes. So, and I'm going to let you answer on something and your experience on that.
Well, I think on the day, for example, your day's getting long because maybe of weather or, your equipment was late or whatever. And so, you got to finish. You're not going to have this location. You got to shoot what you can here. And so, sometimes whatever sequence you had planned that maybe was going to take a little longer, you got to cut that in half. You got to simplify things, and you got to be willing to do that, because that's just part of the reality of it. And there are ways to do it that does not compromise your storytelling. And that's when a lot of the artistry comes in.
Yes.
When you understand that, it would be really cool to have, 2 or 3 cars collide in this, like all these people are coming together and it becomes kind of symbolic. But really, all I need is for the hero to wreck his car, and now what does he do? So, okay, we got to cut a couple of cars, we cut a little bit of this, and he ends up just running into the telephone pole. And you get the same effect where, he's now in a quandary or whatever you want to call it. He's got a problem, and he's still got to find a way to keep going. It's not the same problem you envisioned, but it still serves your story.
And I saw an interview. I'm sorry, one more thing. I saw an interview with Steven Spielberg when he shot Saving Private Ryan. And are you guys familiar with that film? Okay, the scene where the medic got shot when they charged a bunker, and he had that mapped out. He's a major storyboard pre-production guy and all that, and he had it all mapped out. And the location manager said, this is where we're going to shoot it. They measured it out, they rehearsed it, and he had it all lined up. When he got to set, it was totally off. It was wrong. The location manager didn't give him whatever happened, and he said, am I going to get mad at the location manager? I don't have time to do that. I can't fire him. I don't. And what he said, everybody take a break. And he went to the side, and he reworked in his mind, on his storyboard, he reworked that whole entire scene that day, and they made their day. And that was a beautiful scene. That's where they all attacked, and they attacked the bunker. And I thought that was, to answer your question, I think that's a clarity. You have to learn how to adapt, because in that situation, sometimes you have no choice, because the studio may say, I want this, and you can say, okay, fine. And a lot of times it's episodic work too. But then also as a director, when you're working on a set, you have to adapt every day. You have to be ready for change. And that's where I believe foundation. I'm a strong believer in pre-production. Give me 8 weeks production. Give me 10 weeks for a straight drama. And because that's where you build your foundation. What I do with that foundation is I know that if anything's going to go wrong, I have that foundation. I can bounce off of it. If you're not prepared, shooting is the fun part. I learned that when you're a young kid, you want, I'm going to be a shooter, I'm going to smoke a cigarette and be on a set going, oh, good, directed. No, that's the fun part. The hard part is the pre-production. That's when you have your entire team in the office. You have a location. This is our crew right here. This amount of crew, that's what you're dealing with. And pre-production to me is very important, because excuse the expression, when the shit hits the fan, you're going to have that to bounce off. If you don't prepare, you're not going to have it, Okay, and I think question, I'm sorry, sir.
From a writer's point of view, if I were the writer, let's say you have a story and you have this one point you want that story to be about. What I think I'm hearing you saying is there's probably more than one direction than just the one in my head to get there. so that when everybody comes to the production with their own experience, their own life experience, their own interpretations, and they all come together as a whole new entity now, but can they still agree on the main point of what the author was trying to say, even if it doesn't look in the end like what the author pictured, the picture still shows the point of that story.
Yes and no. Yes, most times yes. Like what he was explaining. Yes, you can make it work. You definitely make it work. But again, I've worked with a lot of novel writers, and they hate the translation into film. A lot of because the novel is like 600 pages. So your film is like maybe 2 hours, 3 hour long. So you're not doing 600 pages. So you have to, and it's visual. A novelist could write a script about a tree, and it'll take 7 pages to say how beautiful that tree is. We can do it visually with the film, and that saves you time. But you're going to have to. It depends. I'm going to tell you one of the biggest mistakes I made as a director, young director, is, and I hope this answers your question, is I fought for my stuff. I was with UTA, which was a big agency, and I wrote a script about it was like in the 90s, and I wrote a script about gangs in New York, and I was so excited. I was so excited. I went to California from New York. I said, Andrew Canava, here, I got the new script for you. I could just walk into his office, and I got a new script. He goes, what's it about? I said, gangs. He goes, Frank, this is before computers, and we had hard copy scripts. He goes, you see that pile of scripts there? They're all gang movies. I went, oh, really? I thought I was the only one who made a gang movie. And then he said, you know what, Frank, they want to do it. We want to package it. And I said, oh, I'm the director. He goes, yeah, we'll work that out. Then he calls me up and says, listen, we have another director we got a director. And I said, okay, is it Martin Scorsese? Is it someone big? Is it someone I could learn from? Is it someone like that? They go, no, it's a young kid. It's a young kid who had directed one of the first video films in Brooklyn or something. I said, no way. I said, I'm directing this. No way you're giving that away. It was a mistake on my part because I was young, screaming, said, no, I'm directing this. And they go, well, you're not. And we're not. And they like 8 weeks later, they got rid of me. But, and it was like important. It was very important because I should have said, okay, he's hiring. It was a literary department, and they were hiring me as a writer. I should have said, okay, let me write this and let me get a break. Let me go in there and do it. But being stupid and stubborn. But I learned from that, and I learned to compromise. And working as an executive in the studios, that's why I left the studios. When you work independently, you could make those decisions. Yes, question.
Question back there.
Yes.
I'm not a director or a student, but you alluded to something earlier, and you might have just answered it. What do you do now, not when you were young, when the suits and the higher-ups want to interfere with your vision?
Well, it's like, I don't know if you were here earlier when we talked about the Ryan Gosling situation. When the studio said, no, we don't want him. He's a young Hercules kid. He's Disney. He's not a tough guy. And we fought for him. We took a chance, but I had help. I said, listen, I brought in Billy Zane. Ryan's not the star. Billy Zane was the star, and he was just coming off of Titanic. So I used that as leverage. So I used that as leverage, but I was not alone. The director fought with me. Everybody, the DP, we all went in there, and we almost walked away. But they caved in for what the gods of the movie-making world, they gave it to us, and the rest was history. But sometimes that doesn't happen. You got to make a decision. Okay, I write and I direct and I produce. I should have said in that situation, like I just explained, let me take the credit as the writer. Let me learn. And Andrew Canava is like one of the biggest. He's the one who found American Beauty, and he's the one. Now he's one of the partners at UTA. But you're young, you learn, and that. But what I did do is I never did it again. I learned from that, and that's the biggest thing. Yes.
One question right there.
Hey, how you
Jimmy.
doing? Mike, I met you 15 years ago. I wonder you shed some light, not so much technique. I've been doing this 35 years as an actor. I've only lived in New York and LA, but I was always blown away, and I think I met some really cool, funky, creative people in this 24 hours. I've never been to North Carolina in my life. My nephew went to UNC. I don't like them either. I hate Bill Belichick. And the Giants won last night.
Oh, good, yeah. Oh, yeah, yay.
The question I think is important for people here, because I'm guessing a lot of people here are not from New York and LA and are thinking about moving there. but shed some light. I've always been blown away. You were able to move. You live in Atlanta area for quite some time now, and I would wonder if you could shed some light on. I know it's about doing that, not being in New York and LA, and maintaining a awesome career. If you've ever seen this guy's stuff, I look like a janitor next to him on screen. But shed some light on not being in New York and LA and still making it work without getting lost in the suburban mowing the lawn, doing mulch, and you're out of showbiz in 5 years.
My lawn used to look really good. In fact, the joke was in my neighborhood, if my yard looked really good, I wasn't working. You know what, Jimmy, for me, and you know, everybody has their own reasons. For me, it was a priority choice. And I believe that I'm going to be my best self when I'm living true to myself. And my priority was my family. And for my wife and I, we had a young daughter and another one on the way, and we just wanted to raise kids in a different environment. No offense to anybody who raised kids in LA or New York or any of those big cities. God bless you. It just wasn't for us. And I think that whenever you walk this planet with that sort of commitment to what your truth is, this is one of the things I always tell my kids is live your truth. You know, and my truth was that my number one priority is my family. And I'm not going to make my kids wait around living in LA for me to get the break I need to have the life in LA that we really wanted for them, because LA is so darn expensive. So it was a priority choice. And I think that the sooner you get in the habit of making decisions in your life, whether it's your creative decisions or your personal decisions or whatever, that are true to you, that is going to lay out a path of real joy and success in your life, which is really what we're all here for anyway. And I also think that that's a good basis on which to base your art, is what's your truth? What's the truth that you want to put into the world? What are the stories that you want to tell that you feel like my contribution through my art is this story because I think it's going to make a difference to these people? And I just think that's a great modus operandi to go by, and that was the root of the choice. And we made it work, and then thankfully, not long after we got there was a bunch of us that got together and you know, got the tax incentives going and all that. So just live your truth.
But also, just to jump on that, bounce off of that, now, because he lives in Atlanta doesn't mean he's not going to go shoot on location. Doesn't that mean if he gets hired to do a job?
That's my wife. I travel a lot.
Yeah, you're going to go to New York to shoot maybe. You shot that in P-Town, right? And,
we shot in P-Town in New York, and then the last 2 seasons were in Wilmington.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to go on location once you get hired. As a director, I'll end this with this because we have to get going. It's like I was traveling a lot, doing projects, overseeing projects this year, and somebody said to me, and I'm bouncing off what you said, and it's so true. When I got back to New York, someone said to me, well, how's it feel to be back? I looked around New York City, and I said, man, this is my home. This is where I belong. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to go work somewhere else. Mm-hmm. You know, that's our fun. But he's right. You surround your people with, don't surround yourself with drainers. There's so many drainers in our business. And that's your life. My important thing is, I agree with 100%. My 2 things important in my life is my wife and my daughter. That's what I live for. And that's my legacy.
Yeehaw.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.